And one. Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special returning guest, Ericka Evren. Ericka, how are you doing today?
Hey everyone, I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for coming back. We'll have your other episode, which I believe was season 249, I think is what I saw yesterday. But I will have that down below so you guys can go and check out that first episode where Ericka and I are talking about her books. And it's just always cool to have somebody, when you're, talking about ideas for book two, things like that, or book three, and then when people are actually able to, complete those products and then come back on, it's always cool because I feel like it's kind of like you get that beginning and end sort of thing, in terms of those kind of things. So I always think it's cool when people return. So thank you so much for coming on again and,
Of
letting
course.
us ask you a bunch of questions. So
Yeah, we're ready for it.
yeah. All right. Well, that first one, what have you been up to since our last interview? It was almost a year ago, actually.
Wow. Well, so I did finish writing Echoes of Destiny and I got it published this February actually. So I got it
I
ready
love
and done.
that cover.
You might have seen it popping around the Instagram world a little bit. I've been writing a story that takes place between Mission Auroric and Echoes of Destiny. It's called Trials of Honor, and I'm currently sitting at 62K.
Oh, wow.
So it's nearing almost the size of Echoes of Destiny. I'm really excited for that one. It's a female POV, and I haven't written a
Oh,
female.
cool.
It's been Catrix, so I'm excited for that. And I also got some really exciting foiled bookmarks made.
All those are so cool.
Yeah, I've been working on making a shop for my website so you can buy direct from me. I currently have my ebooks on there. I'm still working on paperback through Book Vault or Ingram Spark. So just another egg in another basket, so to speak, outside of Amazon. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on and just trying to get the words out and keep staying at my job. And yeah.
I think that one is the number one for me is to try and keep staying at
Yes.
my job. I
Yeah,
had a
I
kid
work
who
with,
asked me, like, what are you doing? I'm like, this summer I was like, I'm trying to get all this book stuff, done and
yeah.
prepped.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like I work with preschoolers, but we kind of have like a school classroom setup. So it kind of follows the public school timeline. So I actually have all summer off. And the other day I kicked out like 3,200 words and I was like, who am I?
yeah,
Where have I
yeah, yeah,
been?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's great. Yeah.
It's crazy when those higher functioning things, right? Like the other day, I felt
Yeah.
like someone took a helmet off now that my
Yeah.
curriculum's done and stuff. And I just, my wife's like, oh, you're good to go now. I'm like, I said, I think so. Yeah, I totally get it.
Exactly.
It's a totally
Yeah.
different type of headspace, right? Where you're actually able to think
Man,
and
it's like fluid. It's just like things flowing through your brain to your
yeah,
hands.
yeah,
It's
yep.
magic. And it's like, and I think the next day I crashed. I didn't have a single word come out of me. Oh, it was
That's
funny.
awesome. No, it's totally true. That's like ML Spencer was talking on Wizard Words and Words a while back because she teaches high school English, I believe. And that's what she was saying. She's like, sometimes she goes, I write on the way to school and the way home. She's like,
Oh,
sometimes the way
wow.
home, it's just yeah, she just does the speech to text
Dictation?
and then goes back. Yeah. I'm like, I tried that, but I'm just more of a physical writer, if that makes sense. Like even if
Yeah,
it's typing or yeah,
same.
so I don't
I
have the
can't
words verbally, if that makes sense. But
I can't do dictation. I feel like I would laugh at myself and think
yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah,
no way with what I don't know.
yeah. I think it was Fletcher, regular Fletcher, that was like, he tried that after their interview, and he goes, "Yeah, I was like, had swear words in between because I screwed up or something." So I was like, "Just write
Honking
a
at
high
somebody in
transcript."
traffic.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That'd be fine. My wife said that. She goes, "You'd probably be saying something dumb about the person next to you, and then it pops up." So
Yeah,
she knows
but
me well.
you might get really good bloopers from that. People have
It's
been
true.
talking about like author bloopers in the back of their
Yeah,
books.
yeah,
Be
yeah.
funny.
That's awesome. No, that's totally true. That would be really cool. So this is always one of my favorite questions to ask people, about your guys' products just in general. So I'm curious at what your latest book, Echoes of Destiny, is about and how you came up with this idea.
Okay, so this is a question that kind of gets confusing, but I did write Echoes of Destiny first before Mission of Rarok. But the idea came to me it was more, it started out like a fan fiction because I grew up watching Star Trek,
Oh,
or
yeah,
not
yeah.
Star Trek, sorry, Stargate. There's some Star Trek in there, but mostly Stargate. And so the fan fiction, I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. And then as I grew up, I was like, because I started writing when I was 13, and I was like, I can't publish this. This is fan fiction. This is somebody else's story. This is totally copyright. I don't want to go in bad person jail. So I started thinking of ways that I could make it different, make it myself. I really like the concept of traveling to different worlds. I love the idea of Star Wars, where it was all alien, all new, not tied to Earth in any way. So that kind of was the bones of Echoes of Destiny. And then as I just started like drawing the characters and coming up with them, the story just kind of revealed itself to me. And as I wrote it, it kind of came out. It wasn't easy. I think there was quite a few drafts for Echoes of Destiny, seeing as I started it when I was 13. But final draft was a cherry on the top, and it was like, yes, I have something. So yeah.
Well, I definitely know all about starting at one point and then being like, no, this story is actually over
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's totally. People asked me recently, like, how does that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, you pick a timeline or a point, right? And there's
Yep.
just something in you, right, that says that you need to
Yes.
go, yeah, before that. So
And I
I
I
totally
did have
understand.
like I had a definite scene of like where I wanted Echoes of Destiny to start, but it was actually inspired by Imagine Dragons Radioactive, where he's like,
Oh,
like where he's like waking up from the dust and stuff. And I was like,
yeah,
that'd be cool for a book. It just wasn't working, so I had to let that concept go. But it ended up fitting into the beginning of the story where I wanted it. Sometimes when I start writing a book, my beginning never stays the beginning; it always moves to somewhere else. So
yeah.
at least that worked out for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just curious, because I know what I've done, that's happened to me multiple times actually. Um, and it's almost like you're telling me a story, right? Like we met, you're telling me a story, and then
Yeah,
then later on, you're like, oh, actually, then you tell me a story about even earlier, right?
the
And
prelude.
then, right, I feel like it's like natural, right? As
Yeah.
humans, but I think sometimes as writers, we think, no, this is where I started, it's got to be here. So I'm curious at like what kind of strategies did you use or what did you have to tell yourself in terms of being like, okay, this book is like a book two, I'm gonna have to go,
Mm.
back on the timeline and figure out where this story starts. Like how did you kind of go about that
Right.
process?
So because I did write Echoes of Destiny first, I kind of just plopped people into this world, and they didn't really have any context. They didn't know who Catrix was. Um, and so that's actually where Mission Aurora came from. It was like, okay, I need some context. I need reasons for readers to love this character and to actually care about what's happening in Echoes of Destiny.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's kind of where I stopped writing Echoes of Destiny for a little bit and focused on Mission of the Roark, because I also needed to know who Catrix was, his story. And there were points in Echoes of Destiny's draft where I was reaching walls because I didn't really know my character well enough. So going back and like writing Mission of the Roark as the first book, intended originally to be a magnet, but it kind of just it grew.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really helped me know who Catrix was, what his goals were, and it really tied me to him. And I know that that helped people care about him as a character as well. So yeah, it was just you kind of just don't know what's going to happen. You just kind of start writing, and then I feel like wherever the story takes you, you've got to be willing to
Yep.
just seek that out and go with the flow. And something I learned to listen to was the characters. If the characters are going a certain way, follow those characters. Those are those genuine
Yep.
stories coming out, and you don't want to squash those at all. So that's kind of what I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I just find it interesting because I'm sure people that are returning, have heard me say this before, but like my main character Nathaniel, who's a monster hunter, like I kept trying. I was like, this guy, I saw a piece of art and I was like, that's the guy. And then when
Right.
Jack Reacher came out, I was like, oh, this is the type of guy that would fight monsters for people, and
Yeah.
do the hard thing. And then I was like, oh, then the character was talking, he's like, I'm a Marine. I'm an ex-Marine. I'm like, oh. And then that thing came out, I'm like, oh, okay. And it just slowly turned in. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do a quick short story. and then as like a prequel, and then it turned into novella, and then I was like, oh, maybe it'd be a book, but then he's like, no, this is like a 3-part novella, and I'm
Oh,
like, okay, yeah, right. And people keep asking me, I'm like, he hasn't really told me what's going on in book one yet. I said he slowly has, but it was just, I totally agree with you. I just let him take me, and it
yeah.
just has turned into this.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah, it's changed the world building entirely, and I totally agree with you. I just decided to do just let him take me where he wants to go, and that's where before we got recording, I have a secondary character who is no longer secondary. She's a dual character, and I mean the two of them are going to wreak havoc and do some fun stuff and get in trouble and have to learn some hard lessons, but it
I
just
love that.
turns into a better story. So I just like how you
It
mentioned that,
does.
'cause I think that it does really, if you just let the characters take you where they want to go, it leads you to it. I like how you said genuine place and a genuine story. So I totally agree with you there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel as those genuine characters are followed, it's also easier to write because it's almost like you are, as the author, witnessing the scene between these two characters
Yep.
and just their snarkiness or their like fun banter or like the way they tease each other or whatever that's really
Yep.
shining through. And that's kind of like the moment I had the other day where it was like 3,200 words of like just this awesome character development, but like, yeah, and it was a side character that I didn't think that I would really care about. I thought he would be mentioned once and done, but now he's like a pivotal part of the story now. That's for Trials of Honor that I'm writing. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because like another sci-fi author I had on recently, D.R. Scholl, has this cool like the Galactic Culinary Society, and there was like a
Oh,
secondary character that just pops up and is kind of like a rival character in his first book. But then now has shown up in the other books almost as like a no longer a rival of the main character, but like as like
enemies to friends.
yeah, like kind of like Short Round and stuff in Indiana Jones,
The
or
enemy of
something
my
like
enemy
that,
is my friend.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And but it just created a cool dynamic. And book two, it was so cool. And I'm like, I told him, he's like, I don't know if it worked. I was like, I love it. So I totally agree with you. I think if you can, I don't know. I've just heard a lot of people say lately those secondary characters have been fleshed out more and have been
Yeah.
demanding more of a story. So
Yes.
I think those
Yes.
end up being people like myself, right? Readers like our favorite characters.
Yes.
Or we end up enjoying them a lot more. So I think that makes a lot of
I
sense.
agree. And I think sometimes the second characters are what make the main character a better character. And that's perhaps maybe why they're our favorites, because they're the one
Yep.
pushing the hero to do the right thing or to resist evil or, those kinds of things that we enjoy reading.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know, what would be a good example? I guess Padme wasn't really a secondary character in Star Wars, but it felt like in the third episode she wasn't around as much.
Yeah, I think that's what I didn't like. It's so funny that you mentioned. I just had this thought the other day. I think that's what I didn't. No, seriously, I think that's what I didn't like about the movie as much. Because there's other stuff I like, but I didn't like how they made her like she was kind of just there to have the twins. It felt
Yeah,
like, and for Anakin, and the writing then felt flat. I think if they had treated her as her own character,
yeah,
that it would have been more devastating to me, if that makes sense, like with her death
yeah.
and stuff. But I always think of
Because we really
oh
didn't
like
get to see their
yeah,
relationship much. Like we saw them get married in number two,
yep,
and then number three, she's pregnant, going to have kids. We really
yep,
missed. I like the Clone Wars, the cartoon, because it really helped
yeah,
develop their
yeah. Yeah,
personality or
no, totally.
relationships rather. But
Yep.
yeah, I guess that's one of those examples where a secondary character becomes more loved and supports the hero. Hey,
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was pretty flat because yeah, I think that they just missed out on the opportunities there. But because I
yeah,
loved her character in the first two movies, even in the second one, right? Like Attack of the Clones, I mean, she was awesome. She was
yeah,
out there fighting, she was out there, doing everything, and she was the Leia. I mean, you could see where she was the mother of Leia, and I just
yeah.
felt like the third one, they just kind of dropped the
Didn't do
ball on
her
that
character
one.
any justice. Hey, it was just kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, she was just there. Yep. I think it's a really good lesson to learn though, and um I don't know, I just always find it interesting. But yeah, that somebody there was a female like sci-fi like TikTok influencer that just it's funny they mentioned it just randomly popped up for me on like Thursday. That mentioned that and I was like, "Oh, that's probably why I didn't like it as much because she was one of my favorite characters in the first two. Everybody loves Obi-Wan, he's great, but I don't know. I thought that they did a really good job of not making Leia a one-off, if that makes sense, and
yeah.
just having the strong female characters. But yeah, I always liked her perspective and her leadership, and I don't know, you could totally, I think thought they just did such a good job in the first two, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and the fact that like I'm a woman, but I can still fight and do these things, and like she kind of taught Anakin that when she freed
yeah,
herself in number two, right?
yep,
Like she got out and started fighting too. So
yep.
yeah, a strong
Well,
character, kind of like Red Rising. She's pregnant and
yeah,
she's going around and she's fighting. I was like, oh, mama.
yeah. No, totally. Well, I always think of oh, why am I gonna blank on her name? The queen from uh starts with a B. Like the warrior queen from England, fought the Romans. I
Oh
just thought about
goodness.
it. I don't know why I'm blanking on names, but yeah, she was just awesome, right? Like she was that same thing, right? Like pregnant on the battlefield, just like wrecking Roman soldiers. I'm like,
Yeah.
I always want to do a fantasy version of her, if that makes sense, and
Yep.
doing the same thing to like an empire and just wrecking them. And yeah, but I
Hmm.
think it comes from the fact that, like I always watched Star Wars, and Leia was always such a big influence. That's when I became started to write. I was like, one of my friends was like, your female characters suck. And I'm so glad that you said that, because they did.
Yeah.
I really had to take into account. And then I thought, well, what other of my characters really suck? And I found others that weren't great. And I started to change a lot from that. But I think that's a good lesson to learn from Star Wars. And like Finn is another one from like The
Oh,
Force Awakens. Like it just like set him up so well in the first one, and then we're gonna make him have a random side quest, which was interesting but had no relevance. And then he met cool people on the way, but I don't know. I'm like, talk about inconsistent writing. And I still like
mm.
the movies. I thought they were fun, but I thought that was a waste of a great starting point for a character. It was funny though, because there's one when you said that though, like there's one Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. Um with Alan being the sheriff, I found out
Yes.
recently that he changed the whole script for himself. And a lot of the lines that he came up with are the ones that are the most memorable and made him such a horrible villain. Because he
That's
was
the
such a
one
great
where he
actor.
says, um, where the guy's like, "Oh, why a spoon?" He's like, "Cause it'll hurt more." It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
oh,
yep,
okay,
yep,
I've seen
yep.
that
So
one.
that's like all Alan, and then there's the one where he was like something for you tonight or something,
Yeah.
for the homeless or something, and that was like all Alan. And I just thought, God, like he was such a great, and knowing that, I just found that out this week. I was like, knowing that, and I love that movie, but I love the give and take between him and Kevin Costner. But knowing that he hated the script and had to change it and improve it, and then that's one of the most memorable performances I think for me that he had, and really got me thinking as a writer. Like I always want my villains, male or female, to act like him, and to have that type
Yeah.
of personality. So I
Yeah.
think it's awesome, but it's a good thing I think to learn, in terms of people always talk about why do you like movies so much? I'm like, there's so much you can learn from writing and
Yeah.
and just characterization and stuff. But yeah, it's
That's
really cool.
definitely actually my first absorption of media, I guess, is I watch a lot of movies and stuff. Reading is secondary. I really need to get better at that. But if I start reading, I can't write. So I have to pick one or the other.
I'm in
Um,
that sweet spot right now.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're just bouncing between all the
took
mediums.
me a while. Oh, it took me a while. I now it's funny you said that because now I'm having trouble getting into like TV again, and I'm
Oh,
trying, but I've been more into the comics, books, and
yes.
the Audible and stuff. Like I just finished Red Rising, so I'm on like Golden Sun and stuff.
Cool.
So it's been so hard for me to get into watching something more than 20 minutes. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I could be reading a great book. I'm in all these great books right now. So
Yeah.
it's been hard. But yeah, I agree. When my son was a little younger, like there were other media, like TV shows was a great one. I watched Prey a while back. I love that one. Talk about a great female character. That whole movie was great. But yeah, I don't know. I think when you can get to the sweet spot, you gotta keep going between reading and writing. And I'm
Yeah.
sure at
You
some
just
point
go
I'll
with
get
the
burnt
flow as
out.
long as you can,
Yeah,
right?
totally true.
We
That's
know
funny.
not to test the gods.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to go back real quick because I just realized that we mentioned our first episode together, but I do want to just go back if anybody is new, and if you could just talk to them real quick and just give us a short description of what, or maybe part of the blurb of what book one, Mission of the Rorschach is about. That way, they just kind of know from there.
Okay. So Mission of the Roark follows the story of Catrix. He's kind of like this farmer who's branched out of his clan and into the military. he's kind of shunned for that, but he's really aiming for his dreams to become a starship captain. So that's his goal. Um, Besides being picked on, he's got a little bit of a temper. So he's finding himself in trouble with the authorities, but then suddenly he gets offered this incredible deal to captain this starship. Little does he know that there's other reasons why his superiors asked him to do this. And along the way, there are betrayals and secrets that he uncovers that threaten to destroy his world as he knows it.
And then, do you mind just telling us a little bit about book two without any spoilers?
Oh, that's hard.
I
Anyway,
know it's what do they call it? The second book syndrome or something like that.
yeah. Well, I can tell you is that there is a because Mission of the Rock ends on this fantastic cliffhanger. Echoes of Destiny is quite the time jump. Now, I did have a reader reach out and she's like, I'm concerned about his age. Is he okay? Like, I was like, well, it's a different galaxy, so they can age to like 200, whatever. They're still young chickens at like 68. But Echoes of Destiny is about Catrix waking up essentially and not remembering who he is. Why is the galaxy the way it is? And now all of a sudden he's starting to feel sick inside. So it's really more of a darker mystery, unraveling who he is before time runs out kind of thing. And along the way, he meets this captain of this ship, of this crew, and they kind of invite him on, trying to give him a safe place to rest. But then that also starts causing problems as they learn who he is and where he's from and who's after him.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. It's a little bit of the dark matter TV show
Yeah.
mystery in there. So
Yeah. It's a
cool.
little gritty, that's for sure. I am book three, I'm hoping to be a little bit more not so fluffy, but at least more hopeful.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's fair. I had somebody say that recently. They're like, it's either dark and gloomy or it's all like Star Trek, like,
Rainbows and
exploration.
unicorns.
Yeah. It's like I want the in between. And I was like, well, that's fair. I was like, you just got done with Pierce Brown. So I was like, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But that's actually funny because even as humans, our journeys, like when we're going through the valley of darkness and of shadow, we're in that valley for a good time. It
Yeah,
takes
it's
a
true.
while for us to come out. So when we're writing stories, it's the kind of the same thing. We can't just dangle our hero above the cavern and be like, oh, you're just touching the darkness a little bit.
Yep.
Like they're drugged through that, just like we are as humans. We're actually, we have to live through that, and it's not easy. And it's the same for our characters. So when I was reading Red Rising, there was a lot of going through that valley. And I had to take emotional breaks because I go through
Yep.
that with the character. And I was like, this is
Yep.
heavy. I need a break. But it was so good. I had to find out what happened. So I think it's the same when we're writing. Like book two for me is definitely a lot more darker. But I feel like it was a necessary process for the character to develop and for him to remember who he was, but also for, people to see that it's not always easy for the hero either.
Yeah. No. It's funny to hear speaking my language because I get done with Nathaniel and I'm like, oh, I'm like the things I'm doing to you and the things I'm going to do to you. But I always tell
Yes.
people like it's going to be a great arc, but like it's kind of like, I think a lot of people like Harry Dresden so much, in the Dresden Files because, like you said, right? Like so many of us are just in the crap for so long. Talk
Yeah.
about a character that reflects human emotion. Um, and then there's other people, within the story too, those secondary characters, and even third characters that, are similar that reflect either the good or bad depending on, what he needs at that time. So, and sometimes he helps them through a dark time or they vice versa. And I think that I think that Jim just does such a great job representing the human condition that, it's great. The other stories and parts of the Dresden Files are great, but I really think it's nice to just see how somebody manages through their, just the crappy times and
Exactly.
cherishes the good ones, if that makes sense. Could be within the
Yes.
same book, and
Yeah.
yeah, and just how those things change a person, but and then like how he manages, I think, is a
Mhm.
great way to yeah, to show, that there's always light on the other side of the tunnel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
So
guess it's
I
like when you're
totally agree.
reading, yeah, like when you're reading nonfiction, you're talking about like World War II and the Holocaust, like those
Oh,
people lived through
jeez.
some times, but
Yep.
through their journeys, there was always that little bit of hope that it can get better, right? And I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that's also why Star Wars has such a big pull, is because even though they're struggling so much, there's that hope, right? And I think it's so important, even in our lives, as as writers or as even just people. Like it's so important to have hope in our
Yeah.
lives, whatever that looks like.
No, I totally agree. I get burnt out at the end of the year because we're always doing like, so for both, I have global two and then US history. So it's like I pretty much get to Columbian Exchange at global one, and then there's like a Spanish Inquisition, and it's just like, and then it's like we just got done with World War II for both classes, and then like Cold War, and but it's just like, and then you like I end with like the Rwandan genocide, and it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like the end of the year, it's like I feel like I just get so
Big
heavy.
downer.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a downer, and we talk about a lot of good things, but to get through that, it's like, oh my gosh, I think that's where I got kind of like waylaid with writing, where it was just like it's hard to reflect on some of those things. And I had such crazy primary sources this year
Mm.
that were just like, holy crap. And yeah, just like it took it out of me. And I think like, having to push my character through the muck, so to speak, for novella one and two. I would say the third one's more like the cover will be like him and it's like the sunrise, right? And
Nice.
yeah, so the first one is like the sunset is like the hunted, and then the hunters it's dark, and then the last one it's a sunrise. And
Cool.
Corey Ratliff, who did my covers, we did that on purpose because they're made to reflect his journey.
True.
Um,
That's
if that makes
interesting. I love
sense.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but it literally like if you follow the first three prequel novellas that way, that's how it goes. But it was so hard to keep doing mean things to him as a
I
writer, and
know.
yeah, it was
It's kind
difficult.
of
So I
like
totally get it.
it's kind of, I guess, as a dad, you'll know as soon as your son starts to do things, it's for your own good. Like, I'm sorry you
Oh
can't have that cookie, but it's for your own good.
yeah. I This week we're at the point where like last night I was just like he was teething. I was just like, take the extra piece of candy. I was like, I just the extra piece of chocolate. So
You
I
eat
go,
it, buddy.
yeah. He goes, you have to brush his teeth later. I go, let's just get through the we're at my friend's house. I was like, let's just get through
For
this.
this
And
moment.
well, yeah, we'll hold him down and brush the teeth. So yeah, it's totally true. But yeah, I think as a writer, it's hard, right? Because you are like a parent. It's just
It
such a great
is.
analogy. You have to be like, you have to
Yes.
go through this in order to do this. So
And
that's
it's hard because we kind of have a feeling of the beginning to end.
yep.
I'm a pantser, so they really do leave me by my hand, but I do have some ideas and like indications of where I want to go and what I want him to struggle through. So yeah, it's I'm sorry, but it'll be better in the end.
Yeah. No, that's totally true. That's really funny. And I just wanted to mention because we talked about this before we started recording. You were on the greatest podcast in the multiverse with Herman Stewart Angle. You were episode 21. Like I said, I got to the first few minutes and then my son distracted me, so we'll be finishing that one up. But I just want to mention to our audience that that'll be in the description as well. So I can't wait to see because Herman asks different questions than I do. So I really can't wait after this to go back and listen to the rest of your guys' interview because I'm sure I'll get like double the Ericka and the meeting out of everything. So it'll be really
At
cool. But
double
I
the
did,
Erica.
yeah, right. That feel free to put on a t-shirt. But I did find it interesting that you were on with Beard of Darkness, featuring authors of SFF Loot Box a while back, about 7 months ago. So I'll also put that one in the description as well. So I'm really looking forward to checking that out. And some of the other authors that you mentioned you were on there with as well. But I'm just kind of curious, in terms of being on some different podcasts, like what was like one thing that you kind of learned, in terms of being asked different questions, from different hosts like myself, Herman, like I just was thinking like as an author, I'm going to start to be on some different podcasts, and I have been. And I've always kind of gone into my writing session a little differently. So I'm just curious, is there anything that they asked that you thought differently of and, have maybe changed something off of it?
Hmm. Um, I don't know. Like all the questions are really great. I don't know. It's very hard for me to critique others, especially when it's, something that they've put together and they're asking. But for me, just as to be interviewed, I really enjoy our interviews because you do ask questions that are, like you said, they're not pigeonholed.
Hmm.
So I was so concerned that I was answering the questions incorrectly, and that's not what the answers were looking for. And then just having that reassurance where it's like, no, no, like answer it any way you want. Like that really made me feel comfortable being interviewed. It's nice to know that there's no wrong answer.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I just feel like being made feel comfortable is one.
mhm.
For me, anyways, like I love that we have our pre-session chats. Like it's just like
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
to
yeah.
know, catch
Yep.
up with a friend, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I enjoy that. And I don't know. I think every interview is different. I know there's been interviews where I felt, well, I could have been a little bit better. I could have done that a little bit better. And
yeah, 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 yeah.
maybe I didn't answer those questions correctly, or, I always doubt myself at the end. But I think for the most part, I enjoyed all the interviews, and I wouldn't change anything. Like it's been really fun. Yeah.
No, I just was curious because, I haven't gotten asked this of a couple of the authors recently that I know, we mentioned if they were on with Herman or with Nicholas Fuller or things like that, or like with Adrian and MJ. But just started thinking about it earlier. I was like, oh, like you've been on, three different channels, and so a lot of people have asked me recently, like what it's like, and I'm just a talker, so I'm like, I just don't get stressed or whatever, and I don't need the questions ahead of time or whatever. I just take it as it is what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, I don't know. It's just,
I'll
I don't know.
also note that like it's very easy to talk with you because you kind of have all of these things lined up. You're not following a sheet. You're not trying to stay on schedule. We know that we can edit and cut things afterwards. And
Yeah,
sometimes putting the person first, like you and I having just a conversation, like regardless of the time that we're at, or
yeah, yeah,
what your expectations are for like when you want to be finished or when I want to be finished, to have that
yep,
conversation first and foremost.
yeah, yeah,
It's really nice. It's nice not to feel like, oh, we gotta hurry up because not that I've ever been made to feel that way, but
yeah, yeah,
just from my perspective, it's really nice just to feel like we're chatting and we're having a
yeah, yeah,
conversation, and it's not like there's a schedule or there's nothing stressful about it. Like it's very relaxing. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's good. Well, I'm glad it's good feedback. I just, the audience, I had a lot of people ask me recently, so I just thought I would throw in a just kind of like a subset question for that. I always tell people like just get on, like just go and
Yeah.
talk to people, and
Yeah.
some people don't like the live chats, I think, because they're worried
Um,
about whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're the keeper of your knowledge, right? In terms of
yes.
your books. So
True.
nobody really is gonna know if you're wrong, right? Like
Like,
you know, you know what I mean? Like I mentioned that to somebody recently, like, oh, that's true. Like, yeah. Because I've had a lot of first timers come on, and I always love that. Like John Palladino the third, like I had him on for the first time, and then I saw him, he got gained confidence and was doing a whole bunch of things. So I thought that was really cool. So it's always an honor for me to be somebody's,
first.
first or whatever, or to have people come back on, because it's always nice to see where they started, kind of where they're going. So I always kind of consider
Yeah,
this my video diary with them, if that makes sense. But
exactly.
yeah, it's really
Um,
cool to have everybody back. But
my first interview was with Joshua Space. Maybe
oh,
you've seen him.
cool.
Yeah, he had little shorts that he would do like 15-minute increment
Oh, cool.
episodes. I'm not sure if he does them anymore, but that I think was my very first interview, and I
Oh,
was
that's
so
awesome.
tickled pink because Joshua Space is just like the highest book talker that I had seen. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was
I
like
did not
almost
know that. I'm gonna have
fangirling
to
for a
check that
second.
out. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wrote that down in my notes. I'm gonna have to go check that one out
Oh,
too.
okay.
So that's awesome. That's super
I
cool.
think it was my first, and then after that, I was like, "Oh, someone wants to interview me."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
kind of
that's
funny.
amazing. That's
Uh,
super cool. I did not know that. That's awesome.
and I think there's another one, Blasters and Blades podcast. That one's been a while since I've done, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen them kicking around, but I think it's either Blasters and Blades or Blades and Blasters. I can't remember.
I'll put a question mark. I'm gonna check that out. I haven't heard that one. So if they're doing something, I'd like to check it out. I always like to, and people always ask me, like, you always listen to so many people. I'm like, well, I like to, like again, like Herman and like Nicholas, like
Yeah.
everybody, like John, everybody asks such good questions, and it always makes me reflective, not as like just as a podcaster, but as like a writer. Um, and there's so many things that that I feel like I can learn from, your answers on someone else's podcast. So my wife, she's like, you don't, like, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I listen to podcasts, or I'm on Audible, just like nonstop. And she's like, you're just obsessed. I'm like, maybe I am, but it's fun to be able to go and like someone else's and comment, about
Yeah.
Echoes of Destiny, or or just you or yourself as a person or a writer. It's just,
Right.
I don't know, it's just fun for me, and it's just kind of cool. Like I said, like Rob Lee and I, for Nicholas, there was a couple where, you know, like Brian Wilson, a couple people were on, and we got on there and we're just like hitting up the chat, and
Yeah.
it's fun just to be a person in the space for a while. It's like educators, right? When you can get with a group of educators, it's different. So I think when you can get with a group of writers or
Oh, it's like a
podcasters.
brotherhood, right? You guys are
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
brothers, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just fun. So yeah, no, I
It is.
totally agree.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
that's what community is all about. So I'm
oh
glad you
yeah,
had that
that's
moment where you guys could like, oh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And my kid had fallen asleep. My wife, she's like, "Oh, you're gonna listen to like this whole thing?" I'm like, "Yes, I am."
Darn
So she's like,
tootin'.
yeah, she's like, "I'm gonna go read or do my thing." I was like, "That's fine." And yeah, I literally just sat there, I listened, and I got to, yeah, just like hang out in the chat. And that's her. A couple people asked me to do some live stuff this summer, just like some scheduled things and just like bonus episodes, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally do that. So I'm excited just to, hit people up and be like, hey, in an hour, do you want to just talk like 20 minutes about, whatever or something like that? So I think it'd
Right.
be fun. But yeah, it's cool. So I'm kind of curious in terms of like your planning and execution, like in terms of your world building, because you did say, right, you kind of structured this, Echoes of Destiny different than book one. So I'm kind of curious that like when it came to your planning and execution of the world building, what did you do differently in book two versus book one?
So in book one, there was a lot of space battles. Like there was hardly any time where they got to be on the planet and like interact with other races and stuff. You basically just followed Katrix POV and you were kind of just stuck in his fast-paced, overwhelming battle. And for Echoes of Destiny, I really slowed it down. And for world building, we get to see more planets, we get to experience more aliens. There's I added a couple more POVs that we get a balance between where Catrix is in his headspace compared to somebody else. And I feel like that really added to the mystery of it all as well. Because if we're always in Catrix's head, it's not going to be as interesting, right? We need somebody on the outside kind of looking in. So yeah. And what else did I do that was different? I try to include some more technology than I had previously. So, oh, my cat's in here. Apologies. I
We
included
love
more.
familiars on this podcast,
Yes.
Jan.
I tried including them using the R-Cross a little bit more, which is
Mm.
my version of a teleportation device between planets. So if you don't
Oh,
have a spaceship, you can use this. It's kind of like the railway, I guess, of the of the planets.
oh, cool.
So yeah, just a little bit of that, and definitely more characters, which I really enjoyed. I was missing the fleshed out characters, so
Mm.
I did more of that as well. So I fleshed out more of the characters. I learned a lot from just putting Mission of the Rourke out there and getting feedback. Like
Yeah,
you guys' reviews help so much with us writers, just in terms of feedback. And even if you don't want to leave a review, if you just reach out to us, like I'm so receptive of any kind of like if you find a typo, please tell me. But if something falls flat for you, or if something didn't quite, tickle your fancy, like let us know, because maybe we can grow from that, or
yeah, yeah.
maybe per se we can't go back and change the story as it was, but we can definitely improve in the future. So
Yep.
yeah, I
I
learned a
think
lot.
that's such a good, sorry, it's just such a good valuable advice, because I think most people like my alpha readers, right? Were like the two are like, well, can I actually tell you what I think, and can I give you real feedback? Or I'm like, I'm an educator. I'm like, kids tell me unfiltered
The
stuff.
darndest things.
They're I like talking about a shoot straighter. I'm like, these guys, like, speaking of a railway, they'll like hit you with whatever. So I said,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I was like, it's whatever. I was like, just tell me. And that, I mean, just the fact they didn't beat around the bush, I mean, like helped so much. And that was just like two people. So I'm excited to get back developmental edits and, go forward. And, but I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. Without that feedback, I mean, even taking a break and writing my fantasy, as I call it, I have like a dark fantasy based
Oh
off of a
yeah.
D&D campaign, yeah, that
Yeah.
we were running. That it's just like, even that, like, all of a sudden, like, it took my writing on that, even though it's a different genre and different POVs and stuff. It just took my writing to a whole new level. So I totally agree with you. I think any feedback is just super helpful.
Yes.
Some people, they just say random things. Like, I've gotten great feedback from this podcast. I had somebody the other day say, something random, and my friend was like, I don't know how to take that. And I was like, well, I took it politely and was like,
Mm,
suggested something, like
mhm,
another episode or an author or whatever. But I did like it though, because I'm like, well, it makes you reflective, right? And like maybe
yeah,
I need to do something different, even if I don't agree. So I think that's really valuable as a writer, because even if you don't agree with something I sent you, right, it could give you another idea that then
exactly.
improves your writing. So I totally agree.
100%. And that's kind of like how Nicholas was with me. I felt bad because I did send him a little bit rougher of a draft to read for a beta, which I learned now there's alpha, which is really rough, beta, which is more polished, and arc is like your final, it's ready to publish. So see, we learn as we go. But he gave me such good feedback. Like he was the only one that really signed up. Actually, he is the only one that signed up to like help me, and his advice was just so good, and it just helped me see characters in a new light. And I would strongly recommend any new authors out there, before you do developmental edits, before you get an editor, do the beta readers first. Get yourself a strong team who you've created friendships with. Maybe it's fellow authors, maybe it's just readers, but a strong team of people you can trust that will give you straight from the hip advice. And I mean, it's, as writers, that's still our job to take it or leave it, because these other perspectives, they're just perspectives. But lots of it was so invaluable to me, and I actually got more out of my beta reader than I ever did with my first book, having just an editor. I didn't have a beta reader for Mission of the Roaring, and I feel like I could have done so much better with that book if I had a team behind me. So if I was to pass on any knowledge or wisdom, it would be to have a beta reader, even if it's just one. Sometimes you just need one, you know,
No, no, I totally
someone
agree
that
with
you
you.
can trust and
Yeah,
like bounce ideas off of.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so
No, I totally agree. Logan D. Irons and H.L. Tinsley helped me out, and I was expecting just like a couple of random readers or people from my podcast group, and they both messaged me and were like, "Yeah, I'd love to do this." I'm like, "Are you sure?" Like, um, and you have somebody like Holly, who is a SPFBO, like finalist and stuff.
oh
I'm like,
gosh,
"Are you sure?"
congrats.
You know? Yeah. So I was like, "Dang!" So I was like, "Yeah, please take it." I was like, "Tear it apart." And then Logan, I loved his novella Bridge of Kings. It was just so good. And him and I are doing something similar with like historical urban fantasy, or
Oh,
mixing different, like we're in the same genre, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And yeah, like him and I just went back and forth the night where he gave me feedback, and thank you to both of you listening. And I mean, the amount of feedback I got from both of them was just absolutely amazing. And I felt so much better. And they're like, "Yeah, I want to read the beta the beta version and the final version." And they both were like, "Yeah, I can't wait for the second novella." And I'm just like, "Oh my God, is this happening right now?" And I love both of their books, so it was really cool. So I totally agree with you. If you can find people, that like good people that can help you, if it's one or two, I think it's just absolutely critical to find a team, like you were saying.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it's the same with arcs too. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people feel like they have to send out so many, but you really only need a few just to kind of kickstart
Yeah, yeah.
a good vibe. So, and but you want them to be honest. Like I think out of both of my books, I've done very little marketing for Mission to Rorick, but it's got the most reviews and they're the most genuine. I didn't reach out to anybody. They were just kind of left by, well, I did have a couple arc readers, but the majority of them are by people who just found it and read it and left reviews all by themselves. Like it
Mm.
feels good that they're authentic, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, totally.
And I do not do paid reviews. Like I know some people will do it, but by the time you add up, oh, we charge $30 to review your stuff. Like that's $30 that you could have spent on, another book cover or,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. So I
No.
don't do paid reviews. It just feels cheap. And I feel like most people just plug it into AI now. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
feel like it's genuine. There have been a couple instances where I've done some author swaps where I'll read their story for mine. And which I apologize to everybody who's listening who I've said I'll take an arc and read it in time. I have not, and I feel so bad. I'm the worst.
Uh, Educators
I'm so
here.
sorry.
I'm in the same boat. I'm like, until next week, I can't really finish up. I mean, it's just been nuts.
I feel bad because I've got Herman's that I have yet to read for his Eclipse when he released that. Like he's got all his trilogy done now. I still haven't
Yep,
read
yep.
it. Quite a few, but yeah, I don't think paid reviews are worth it. Just spread the word and be authentically excited about what you're writing, and that's it. You don't have to try and push it. to people that don't like it. Like people who like it will find it. So
Yeah. Well, that's like Clayton, right? Snyder. And if everybody can go and buy and read his Cold West, I'm always teasing him because
yeah,
anytime someone mentions it, I'm like, hey, book two. I
yeah,
tell him, I was like, if I win the lotto, the first thing I'm gonna do is pay him to, write the book two for me, and then he
yes,
can release it to everybody else. But yeah, it's like, but like I totally agree with you. There are just some people where I'm like, I've read their book and I will be a champion to the day I die for their writing, and their
yes,
book and their characters. So I think that's so much more genuine, and
100%.
helps. Yeah. So
And
I
it
totally
comes through the reviews too. Like readers
yep,
know what's genuine. They're not
yep.
stupid.
Yeah,
They're very
yeah,
smart.
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Well, someone
Yeah.
asked me recently, I was like, can I interview you? They're like, do I have to pay? I'm like, people are
Oh.
doing paid podcasts. I was like,
Oh my
no.
gosh, can you imagine? Ugh.
Yeah, I'm like, no one, everybody's been so good because I told everybody before the season, I was like, yeah, I have a kid. I was like, and it's just been a crazy year and I got a new job and stuff. So it's been nuts this school year. And I took on way too much stuff, but I was just in a position where it was like either I taught classes or kids didn't have classes. So I just taught extra classes. I didn't get paid extra, but taught extra classes.
Oh
So
no.
but now we're done, and I have a huge amount of classes I've never taught before. Experience. My resume is just like overflowing now. But and I feel like I felt more as part of the community and stuff. Where I'm working and stuff. But people have just been so good. I've just told people I'm like I have to get to season 4, season 5. I think I'm booked to like season 6, honestly. So I got a
Wow.
couple people I can rearrange, which is nice. But I'm like I just don't have enough time in the day. But it's great to just be able to tell people like, yeah, I'm just busy. And I know somebody, an author told me a while back, they're like, because they just had their second child and they were like, yeah, they're like, it's hit or miss, and like Corey and I have been trying to get his next interview with me for his third book out recently for his epic fantasy. And he just had a baby a while back too, about the age of my son. So it's like, it's hit or miss, and but he was like, yeah, neither one of us is getting paid for this. I'm like, that's fair, so we do the best that we can. But I think the grassroots stuff, like that I do is just it's really helpful for me and for everybody, But it's just cool to have like the Facebook group, turn into a community where there's like 5 or 6 people that will share anything that I share, and I share their stuff all the time. But it's just cool to have like that root group, where we can get, your book or, this interview or something else out there to people. And then when they share it, I reshare it and then they reshare it, and it's just we're just getting the algorithm to help people out. So I think that just natural grassroots type of thing, which is important, which I was saying earlier, that you've been on different podcasts and, are taking advantage of the community and, in a good way and just using your connections and resources. I think there's a lot more out there than people think.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
yeah, and I think finding a team or a niche in the community as well just is really helpful. So yeah,
Yeah, it's nice to find your tribe and have people to hang out with that share
great
the
way to
same
put it.
headspace with you. Otherwise, well, and we're funny creatures. We as writers, like I'm an introvert until I go to work and then I'm extrovert. Then I come home and I'm introvert and I want to be alone. But it's like as writers, it's a little bit lonely because it's our job only until it gets to marketing. And then it's like,
Yep.
ooh, yeah, I have to
Yeah,
make
true.
friends. I have to talk to people. But
That's
I love reaching out to people and like making those friendships. I've made quite a few, probably like the last 2 years, just genuine, like, whether they're an artist or a writer or just somebody that I enjoy what they do. Like,
yep.
you know, it's good to have friends and it's good to have a community. And that's, yeah.
No, I totally agree. My wife, she goes, I was like, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, it's like work. She goes, you're just going to talk to your friends
Exactly.
about books. I'm
She
like,
said, don't complain. You're talking to your friends.
yeah. But we've been trading off for stuff, like she'll go to the gym and do whatever, and I'm like, yep, and like this is usually like one of my hours, out of the weekend days where it's just like part of our schedule now and stuff, and yeah, I always tease her. I'm like, when my son's old enough, I was like, he can be the co-host, but right now he's just too much of a wild card. But yeah, but it's funny, and people like my friends and family know they're like, oh, do you have an interview this weekend? And like
Oh,
everybody's
wow.
yeah, yeah. So it's just, it's like funny that it's just become like part of our,
Your life.
like family routine. Yeah, part of our life, if that makes sense. So people will be like, "Oh, did you get your words done today? Like, can you come and do this?" Or, or
Wow. I love that. there's so
Yeah,
many people in
so
my life that they just don't know I'm a writer, and I am a
mm,
preschool teacher, so I kind of keep it private from like moms or whatever, because it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
really a children's story, right? But
yep, yep.
there have been a few that found out and they're like, "Oh my God, you write?" And I was like, "Yes, I
Yeah,
do."
yeah, yeah.
Please don't read
Well,
it.
I had to. Some of my changes are going to make mine a little bit more adult, not like sexual content, but just like a little bit more adult. Like I
Adult
usually,
themed, right? Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, well, so I'm like, well, we'll see how this goes. I was like,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be anything that'll get me fired, but I was like, I'm sure kids will be like, you say to be professional in real life, but then you have your characters that swear. I'm like, yeah, but it's my characters that swear. It's not me. I'm like, I'm not, coming to my job and stuff. So it's always interesting to be an educator and see, some of those
Yeah.
things. But yeah,
But have you seen that author where he shows his classroom that he's published a book and now
so
it's a
cool.
movie?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Sky's End or something
So
like
that
that.
could
Yeah,
be you.
so cool. I
That
just
is
love that.
awesome.
Yeah, the more he's blown up the last 6 months, I was just like, this is just so
Way
cool.
to go,
'Cause that
dude.
just is such a cool
Ugh.
thing to show your kids. And I have
Oh
my
man.
book cover behind me at school. I have like a board of pictures and stuff from my family or sports
Yeah.
coached or other classes I've taught,
Yeah.
like past kids and stuff. And so I have my book cover there, but it's just so funny. Like, yeah, like, it's just, I think that's such a cool lesson to learn. It's like this thing that I've always wanted to do since I was like 13, 14, younger than, my students, that I'm actually doing. So I think it'd be cool to start off the school year releasing, my first novella and stuff, and then having the next two, and then my first book in like January, February. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think it'd be so cool to just show them. So
Of
that guy,
course.
I just think that was so cool as an author
Oh
and
man.
just to show like doesn't matter what you want to do if you stick with it, you can do it. So I think that's just such a valuable, real, tangible evidence for those kids, and I think that's so cool that he got to share it with them first. So
Yeah.
that was just that
And
was
as
awesome.
a teacher, he knows that they're backing him 100%. Like, can you
Yep.
imagine the love and the genuine support that
Yep.
they would have showered him with? Like, just his face when they're go, ah, he's
Yep.
like, I know
Yeah.
that feeling. That's amazing. Like,
Yep, yep, yeah, it was
the
awesome.
best.
Yeah, I remember when I proposed to my wife and I like told my team at the time and they just like flipped out. It was like really, really funny. So yeah, it's always
Oh,
nice to and then my next team, which was my last one, I had them for like 2 years. So when I told them, that like I was having a baby and stuff, they were just like at like flipping
ecstatic.
out. So yeah, it's really fun with those kind of things, I think. But yeah,
Yes.
really cool. Yeah, I can't wait to to see his movie. And I have that book actually like somewhere on my summer read list. Speaking of arcs, I'm trying to get my arcs done the
Yes.
next several weeks so I can get to books that I were actually, kind of like on my reading list. I had people who were like, "Hey, can you do this and help me?" I'm like, "Yep." And not that I don't want to read their books, but arcs are a little different than,
Yeah,
just picking and stuff. So um
exactly.
can't wait to get to my summer reading list that I had originally. But
The
yeah.
same.
Yeah. Um, so I'm curious in terms of like who was your favorite character in terms of book two, you added POVs and I'm just curious that like who was like your favorite one to add or maybe to add something new to if they were in the first book.
So I've had this character develop since I was 13, and he's kind of like the father figure that you could possibly imagine, like the perfect father figure. But so his name's Javix, and I have missed writing his character so much. So I was like, he's got to be the captain of the ship. And he is kind of like the father figure because he's very forgiving, he's very graceful, he's very wise, and he brings them about, these people about aboard his ship, and gives them a safe refuge from the Nevo. And I just was really looking forward to writing his point of view, just somebody who's a little bit more steady on his feet, and just that, I guess, that wizard, if you will, of the Lord of the Rings, like just calm, I've got all my shit together kind of thing. He does
Yeah.
have some faults, which people will find out. The other character that I was really looking forward to writing was Arrow, and he's kind of like the swashbuckler, the handsome, the you know gunslinger kind of character. That he's Javik's second in command, and they kind of like butt heads a little bit, and but they're really just bros. So I was just really looking forward to writing more characters that weren't K-Tricks and exploring those characters that have been kind of sitting on the back bench for a while that I was just waiting to get back to. So yeah, Jevex and Arrow for sure. This one only has, well, I do have 3 povs that happen in Echoes of Destiny, but there's only 1 chapter from a different character, and she's actually the point of view that I'm writing from in Trials of Honor. Her name's Alicia. But Javix and Arrow, so Arrow really doesn't get his own spotlight, but it's mostly Javix POV and K-Trix. So I hop between those 2 and kind of like as the story goes on, which really helped with with K-Trix need to faint. Then there's Javix to start the next chapter and to figure out what the hell happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the characters I was really looking forward to writing. There's also a couple sassy girls in there, so keep an eye out for them. And more of he's like a dragon, but he's a lizard human kind of thing. You probably kind of like a D&D. What are those? I've seen him on Pinterest. I was like, oh, that's so much like a Varanus. But
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. I don't know. Oh, Dragonborn.
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
guess.
Took me a minute. I'm like, I
Just a
know
big
that.
walking lizard. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. They're
But
always like those and like cat people. They're like my 2 favorite like
see,
non-human
that's what Javix
species.
is.
Oh,
Javix
that's
is like a jaguar, but he's got these beautiful blue, shimmery, purpley spots on his back instead of like the
oh cool.
typical jaguar swashes.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
Awesome.
a
That's awesome.
I have all this character art that I wrote like on paper, but I wanted to take it further into the digital world, but saving up for something to draw on is crazy. So I actually have like an ebook sale on my website going on right now because I'm trying to fund this super duper expensive tablet. It's not that much, but $600 is quite a bit in a pinch, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm crowdfunding for that and trying to save up for that. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm following this other author, Larissa, and she's like does all her own art for her book that she's written, and she's really inspired me to like pursue that. But I just know that I can't draw on a tablet and look at a screen. I have to draw on the screen. It's just
Yep.
that's just
No,
how I
I
grew
get
up
it.
writing and drawing, right? Like it's gotta
Yep.
be on the paper.
Yep. No, I totally get it.
So yeah.
That's actually part of what I was thinking about because I'm like gonna do a Kickstarter for my prequel novellas because I'm gonna once the 3 are done, I'm gonna wait till like next summer and then I'm gonna do my own anthology because I would love
Yeah.
to do a painted cover. And then in that, I was talking to Herman about this. In that, I think I'm gonna because everything already be edited, right? So I was
Yeah.
thinking, well, I'll just hire an artist to do some different things with different tiers. But one of the things I'd already talked to a couple people about was to put all 3 into one audiobook and then
Oh,
separate it. Yeah, so if you want them, you can get them separated or do them all together as like an anthology. So I think I'm going to do that in terms of different tiers. But it's funny that you mentioned that with like a tablet. I was thinking of having the artist do some different art pieces for me too. So people would get those as different things. And my
yeah.
school, I'm able to sublimate, 3D print, do all sorts of cool things myself. Yeah,
3D
right.
printing. Oh,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
lucky, lucky boy.
Oh, you should see some of the things that we can do
Oh
now.
my
Like,
gosh, I would
yeah,
love a 3D
uh,
printer. Oh,
it is like absolutely incredible. So like I could do my own minis, like go on to Hero Forge, get the one file, STL file, print my own for people. So the different tiers, it's just cool to be able to do your own merch because all I have to do is
yes.
provide the materials. So like the sublimation, I just have to, bring my own materials and like the ink, but I can use the sublimation printer. So I could do like swag bag stuff, like just all sorts of stuff. So, but it's just
Yeah.
interesting you said that because I'm like, I need some more art and especially for my new website. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool to put that automatically into the Kickstarter. So talked to a couple people recently about different levels of stuff. But I
Right.
definitely want a tablet too because I'm taking some different classes this summer, like Photoshop and different things like that. And I definitely want to be able to do that
But
stuff.
yeah.
So I get it. Yeah. It's like anybody wants to fund Ericka and my tablet, feel free to
Yeah, exactly. And for me, portability is such a big thing. iPads, unfortunately, are super expensive, way out of
yeah,
my
yeah,
league.
yeah.
You can't upgrade the memory at all. You're kind of stuck with
Yep.
what you get. Some systems
Yep.
don't work on there. So I've been
Yep.
looking at this. It's called a Magic Drawing Pad from no, it's from XP Pen.
Okay.
And it's powered by Android, but it's a portable drawing device, low blue light. You can draw right on the surface, feels like paper. You can have all the, like you can have Clip Studio, you could have Photoshop, you can have all of those on there. And the one I'm looking at, because as you mentioned, 3D printing, I'm like, can I do sculpting through Blender on there? Because I would
That's
love to,
cool.
like, because I sculpt like with the actual stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like, it takes time. Your hands get dirty, tired, whatever. But to be able to sculpt on a computer program and take it to a 3D printer, as you were saying, like you could
Yeah, yeah.
design your own characters and print them. And
Yep.
like, it's technology nowadays is just like my little fangirl heart for my own stuff is like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, totally. I didn't think about that. So now you put that in my head. So I'm gonna have to check with my tech guy and we'll have
I
to
know.
find
I
a
sent them
different
an
device
email.
now. So 'cause I
Yeah.
had a couple already set aside, but now you have me thinking I'm like, I don't think we could do that with those. So now I'll
Yeah.
have to he's gonna be like, damn it, Dan, I already found you these two. He found my laptop and then I
Oh, I
broke it.
see.
My
Oh
my
no.
son my son got in the way and I it was either save him or my bag and I was like, oh, it's in a protected bag and now I have to get the hardware fixed. So he's like
Oh no.
responsible. I was like, well, I saved my child, so am I
That's
responsible?
way to
So
go, Dad.
I know,
You
right?
should
Yeah,
find
just
your
random
laptop
question.
just because of that. You're a hero.
Exactly. Exactly. I have to check that out now. I'm gonna have to write that down. So I'm curious at what were some of the challenges you face in accomplishing your goals for the second book in the series? And then maybe what was one success that you enjoyed from it?
So the challenges were definitely just the huge time gap that happens between the first book and the second book. I wanted the second book to feel like, you know, everything had gone bad. It was like when he woke up, it wasn't going to be like, oh, things are still kind of changing and getting bad. Like everything bad has already happened. Like people are at their worst. There's slavers, there's bounty hunters, there's things that were happening in this galaxy that when Catrix was, kicking and alive in the first one, these things weren't happening because there was law and order. And now all of a sudden the galaxy's just spiraled into chaos and evil because of the Nevo's reign. So that just that time gap and like having that come across properly was one of the challenges I faced with writing Echoes of Destiny. And I mean, obviously, there's only been one person that's reached out and like, is he old? Is he okay? What about everybody else that he knew? And but yeah, because you're in a different galaxy, in a different world, you can really just make the rules as you want. And I felt like 68 solar rotations was a good jump. And it's not going to be the exact same amount of time as say Earth because it's a little bit different. I haven't gone down those metrics, but I chose 68 solar rotations. So
Yeah, yeah,
so that was one of the challenges. And then also keeping the suspense in the novel with knowing what I knew, but also kind of keep it a secret from Javix, a secret from Catrix, and that Catrix doesn't know what's going on, and I have a Javix, and they're trying to unravel it, and just writing that first bit of mystery throughout the whole book, like that was my first dabble into it. That was a challenge because I wasn't sure that I was going to quite get that put out there right. So I feel like I did okay. People have really liked Echoes of Destiny. Something else I was worried about was how gritty and dark it got at one point for my character. And I reached out to a reader who had been sharing her thoughts about it. And I was like, was it too dark? And she's like, no, actually, it was not too bad. Like I've read far worse. So I was like, okay, phew, I can full-heartedly go forward and say I made the right choice. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you can't
yeah,
have
yeah.
just a second guess yourself.
Yep.
And then one of the things that just felt right was the ending that I wrote. Book endings can be so challenging, and I wanted to end it in such a way that it gave enough information for there to be a third, but that it was also satisfying. So I wanted to make the reader satisfied, but I also wanted them to want to read the next one.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like I pulled that off pretty well. I had some people reach out and be like, hey, it's very much like, the end of Star Wars episode 6 where they're having a dance party or they're celebrating. And I was like, oh, that's good. Like that wasn't the scene in my head when I was writing it, but I'm glad it gave off those vibes. So I feel very accomplished about that. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that was quite the journey, but I'm really looking forward to writing book 3. There's some different things going down that have been stewing since February. February is when I launched Echoes of Destiny, and I've just been kind of taking 4 months. I've been writing like Trials of Honor. I want to get that finished. But lots of good ideas have been coming to me for book 3, and I'm really excited to get into that. I thought I had a title picked, And now I'm not too sure. So it's just one of those things as writers that change over time. Like, so I did have a poll and people voted, but now I was like, I don't like any of those now. Like, I feel like it
Yeah,
needs to be something else because I feel as time goes on, what Catrix has to now do in the third book is a lot different than what I previously thought when I ended the book,
yeah, yeah.
and Destiny. So yeah, it's changing and growing, and maybe I'll surprise people with a title they think it's going to be, or maybe it'll be something new.
That's awesome. I totally get that. Yeah, like I always tell people, like, yeah, just gonna call it this project working title for now, and because you don't
Exactly.
know, right? Yeah,
Yeah. And
totally.
I feel like too, something that I learned maybe that people will get from this interview, Mission Aurora, I wrote with the whole pretense in my head that it has to be what people want. It has to be perfect. It has to be this. It has to be that. And I really did not listen to my characters, my writing, or my technique. And even though I think the story came out okay, it could be better. And I really do plan on going back and rewriting it and making it better. But for Echoes of Destiny, I was like, you know what, gloves off. However the story is going to come out, this is how it's going to be told, regardless of what people want. This is the story that I'm hearing,
Yeah, yeah,
and I just wrote it, and it feels like a better product. It feels like a better story. It feels like the characters grew. They're well rounded. They're more fleshed out. So any advice that I can give to new writers is just write the story that you hear first, and then if you have any concerns about like if it's falling flat in an area or if it's got a plot hole, or then seek advice. But yeah, first write the story and put what everybody else thinks or wants out. So I found that to be, yeah, a lesson late, a lesson too late learned.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great advice. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I had something like that. I was like, oh, I wanted to change something. I was like, nope, I'm just gonna finish this chapter.
Yeah,
And I was like, the way I originally saw it, I was like, you have to have something down, right, in order to improve it or to show someone to improve it. You can't, I feel like you can't do
exactly.
that three-fourths or halfway through. So, so I feel like you ruin the process that way, if that makes sense. So I was like, I
Yeah.
just finished and I was like, I'll come back to it later. So I think that that's really, really good advice. So we're getting to that last question for you, Erica. So I'm curious that do you have any news updates? And you talked a little bit about current projects, but is there anything else so far that we haven't mentioned that we should be on the lookout for?
Oh, besides like just trying to get my website up for like a storefront, the bookmarks that I got there that I want to sell, writing Trials of Honor, which I don't. I'm really bad at author launches. I'm so bad at organizing those things. I kind of just announce it when it's happening. So I'm trying to be better about that. But yeah, I am working on Trials of Honor. I do want to have it finished, hopefully before Christmas this year. But you know what?
Oh,
Yeah, don't hold me to that.
yeah, yeah. When you work with children, nothing is definite.
Exactly. So yeah, just besides writing Trials of Honor, and that's kind of a nice piece of the puzzle between Mission of the Rorok and Echoes of Destiny. I'm hoping to start writing book 3 here come this summer because I want to finish Trials of Honor. It's probably at the 75K, so it'll still be like, I mean, my other books are pretty
Yeah, yeah,
small. I've tried to write bigger books, and you know what? It's just not in me, and I've learned to
yeah,
live with that and accept that. I love big
yeah,
honky chunks, but maybe I'll make it a Nevis or whatever they're called. And
yeah, yeah,
that'll be
yeah.
my
No,
chunk.
no, 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 it's that's a great
So
idea.
yeah, I'm really hoping to start book 3 this summer, as July kicks off, finish up Trials of Honor, and hopefully fund that tablet.
No, definitely.
Yeah, and then as a writer, I have a fantasy series that I'm thinking about writing. I have some, I would say, dystopian or almost cyberpunk kind of futuristic a cop story that I want to write. So there's definitely things in the pipeline, but I can't quite let go of the Arcarian series quite yet. And then I'm hoping as soon as I'm done book 3 that maybe I'll write 3 more, but maybe just further down the line, kind of like what Pierce Brown did. He did a really good job of writing those 3 initial books and then
Yep.
completed the saga with another 3. Well, and now he's writing a 7, so maybe we'll get 2 more books out of him. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Never know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on, and what I'm filling my summer with. So yeah.
That's cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on again, Erica. I want to remind people, if you are new or if you're returning, you can find all of Erica's links and products below here in the description, anywhere where you're watching this podcast or listening to it. I'm also going to put our previous episode with Erica, season two, I believe it was episode 49, but I'll double check. But I'm also going to put in a couple of other interviews, particularly Greatest Podcast in the Multiverse, episode 21 with Herman Stewart Angle, a buddy of mine. And then that Beard of Darkness chat sounded really cool. If I could find Joshua's as well, I'd love to listen to that and put that in there as well. That way people get a nice wide breadth of, your writing and experiences. But other than that, I thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to talking to you per usual on Instagram.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, it's been so fun being able to chat with you again. It's always just like hanging out with a buddy. So thanks again for
Yeah,
having
yeah.
me on your show.
No, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too. Okay, take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
see you later. Bye.